This is the Bat Flip Podcast. Now here's your host, Damien, David, and Matt.
Hey everybody, and welcome in to another season preview edition of the Bat Flip Podcast. My name is Matt. I'm here today with David, and we are going to talk about the Baltimore Orioles today. So the Baltimore Orioles are incredibly interesting because they went through this rebuild the last few years, or a few years ago. They completed the rebuild, and they had a they were the worst team in baseball for a good portion of 3 to 4 years, pretty easily. And they built up their farm system through the draft and through not really that much even through trades, but mainly through the draft. I mean, they drafted like crazy, and they created this core group of players that have been excellent at the big league level and have really boosted them into being a playoff team the last couple of years. And you know, they appear to continue on that trend this year with their position player lineup, which is incredible. So, the Orioles have had an interesting ownership situation where the team got sold last year. They brought in new ownership. Um, we haven't really seen the dividends of that come out yet. It's obviously helped them to a certain level, but it hasn't been, hasn't quite been fully, like, we haven't fully started increasing payroll or anything yet. So they're kind of in an interesting state where they've got a lot of optimism about their ownership and everything, but they still haven't really done a ton to supplement this incredible group that they currently have. So, David, what do you think the overall state of this franchise is at the moment?
I mean, it's one of those where, in spite of themselves, they're in a really good spot, right? This is a really, really good baseball team. Best collection of position playing players in the AL East, in my opinion. I think, you've got a very complete team here. I just, I wish they would get out of their own way, right? Mike Elias is very famously a prospect hugger, refuses to make big trades involving his prospects, which are, I mean, at this point, we're going to go through this roster, but there's some very glaring weaknesses that could have rather easily been filled and ended up being filled by their direct division rivals. So, this is a spot where this team is good, but it really could have been better. And with this new ownership, right, we kind of figured they would go out and maybe try to re-sign Corbin Burns or go out and, make a splash in free agency. Their ultimate biggest splash was Tyler O'Neill, $50 million. It was pretty underwhelming. This is a team that, when it's go time in Major League Baseball, you have to kind of make a big run at things and make a big addition. And the Orioles have not done that. And at this point, right, the question is, well, then do they use that to try and extend a Gunnar Henderson and Adley Rutschman? Yeah, maybe. But until I see it, right, I think they've got, solid 3 years until this core kind of blows up. And that'll be the big tipping point. But they've still got some time. And I like this team. I just wish they would get out of their own way.
Yeah, I'm with you on a lot of that. I think the big issue is not necessarily not making huge splashes in free agency. I think the big issue is the fact that if they're gonna have a limited payroll from that, have all this flexibility, why are we not extending guys? I mean, the
Mm-hmm.
Royals have been able to get it done with Bobby Witt Jr. You remember the Padres did it with Fernando Tatis Jr. when he was kind of at that same status as what Gunnar Henderson's at. Like, you you've seen it several times with several different franchises, and they haven't done it. So
Mm-hmm.
I think that could be a bit of that could end up being a bit of a problem for them going forward. But right now, like you mentioned, this is a good team. We'll move on and we will take a look at their offseason real quick. And their additions, I mean, Tyler O'Neill, I know you're not a big fan of Tyler O'Neill. I like Tyler O'Neill to a certain level. He's had some really good seasons and he's shown some ability. He's not a bad player. He really does add a pretty good piece there in the outfield. Gary Sanchez is going to come in and be their backup catcher behind Adley. They brought in Ramon Laureano, who was pretty decent for a half a season in Atlanta last year after bouncing around a bit. Charlie Morton, they brought in to help out in the rotation. That's definitely an interesting one that we'll probably talk about more when we get to the pitchers here. But if that's your big addition in the pitching staff, I don't know.
Yeah.
Tomoyuki Sugano is another pitcher that they added. Interesting guy coming over from Japan. We'll see what happens there. I think he's more of a command control, not that throw real hard. Maybe he's probably a fine number 5 to have. They brought in Dylan Carlson, and I guess we'll see if they're able to figure something out with him. Former top prospect that's just had never put it together. Roansy Contreras has interesting stuff still. We'll see if he's able to figure something out. And then yesterday they signed Kyle Gibson. We're recording this on Saturday, the 22nd. They signed Kyle Gibson yesterday, which kind of shows their where they feel like the state of their rotation's at right now. So,
Yeah.
David, this offseason for them, their additions, I agree with you. I don't think they did enough.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm assuming that it's just not. It just doesn't seem to be like. It seems like they could have done a lot more.
Yeah, I think Tyler O'Neill is okay, but I also think Anthony Santander leaves a pretty giant hole.
Yeah.
Right. That was 40 home runs last season. He's been a team leader for a long time. I think they needed to be more in play for maybe a Pete Alonso, somebody who could take over at first base. Just a big masher that could kind of set the tone in the middle of this lineup, because this lineup is full of guys who are really solid, but it's missing some of that, thump, I think. And Tyler O'Neill has that kind of right-handed pull power, but he may miss a lot of time. That's just kind of how Tyler O'Neill's whole career has been. His body just is big. He breaks down pretty easily. The rest of this group, it's just not enough for a team that's looking to win 90 plus games, go out here and win the AL East and make a World Series push. And this is not a team that typically makes the trades in the middle of the season, right? Like last year, they traded a couple of decent prospects for like Trevor Rogers. Like this is not a team that's been good at making trades. I don't trust them to make a big trade in the middle of the season that'll actually like positively impact this team. We talked about the Red Sox. I felt pretty strongly they're going to make a trade for a closer. I don't know that the Orioles are going to make any trades at all. And that puts us in a really weird spot, because they should and they can. They have the farm system for it, but this edition group it leaves me very lacking of confidence for the middle of the season where this team could get better.
Yeah, I get that. And I do think that at some point they will be a little bit more aggressive with making trades. I don't know that they fully believed in their team the last couple of years going into the season. And of course, last year they traded for Corbin Burns too. Got to remember that. But speaking of Corbin Burns, we'll talk quickly about the subtractions. He's top on the list there. That's a big loss. He was excellent last year and just one of the most consistently good pitchers in baseball. Anthony Santander, I think that's another guy me and you probably disagree on just a little bit. I'm not a huge Anthony Santander guy. Definitely the power helps, but he doesn't do a whole lot else. And I think that this team has enough power as it is. So, we'll see. I mean,
I disagree with that completely. He plays both corner outfield spots and first base. Like I just power. He doesn't strike out a whole lot. Like I feel like he's a really good player. Blue Jays got, but the lack of his impact in the middle very well could be felt, because now they don't have a home run guy.
Yeah. Well, and if they brought in Tyler O'Neill and he hit 31 home runs in 110 games last year, and you have Heston Kjerstad to supplement that a little bit as a platoon type thing. And I mean, I feel confident that those two guys playing left field can at least reduce the sting of that loss. I don't think Anthony Santander is one of these superstar irreplaceable guys, and kind of when you look at the contract he signed in Toronto, and I don't know that he was a needle mover for them. I think they've got enough as it is, and bringing in the guys they brought in, I think they replaced him pretty well. But we'll see what happens there. They lost Danny Columb to free agency. I still can't say his name. Jacob Webb, John Means, they lost. He didn't pitch a lot last year, but that one kind of stings because he's been with this franchise for a long time. Craig Kimbrell had a good 3 months and then a absolutely atrocious 2 months, and he's now back with the Braves, which will be interesting. Austin Slater has moved on, and Eloy Jimenez they brought in for half the season, and he didn't really do that much for them, and he's moved on as well. So I guess other than those top two, we talked about them a little bit. Does any of the rest of this mean too much to you?
Nah, this this is normal roster churn, I think, but
Yep.
maybe I am overstating the impact of Anthony Santander, but I would say losing him and Corbin Burns
Yeah.
is a big impact, and I do not believe that they replaced Corbin Burns. We'll talk about that more on the pitching side.
That's where I'm at. Like they replaced Anthony Santander pretty well. They did not do anything to replace Corbin
Right.
Burns. So we'll get to that here in a few minutes. But first we'll discuss the bats here for this team, and this is a great group.
Yeah.
You've got Tyler O'Neill out there and left. As I mentioned, I would assume that Hurston Kjerstad takes some spots, some games there too. He's listed there on the bench, but Tyler O'Neill is last year he had a 130 something WRC plus, and he hit 31 home runs in 113 games, and he's definitely somebody that has the talent. He's just dealt with injuries at times that have really slowed him down. He does strike out a ton, and that's a little bit of a problem for some of these bats here for the Orioles. But they got Cedric Mullins out there in center still. He's a solid player. Definitely a good defender. Can steal some bases. Gets on base at a fairly decent clip. He's just been a consistently solid player for them. Colton Cowser and Wright had an excellent year last year coming up. Put up 4 wins above replacement last year, and I really like his talent. I don't know if he's quite as good as he was last year. He's another super high strikeout guy, but he was very solid for them. You got Jordan Westberg at third, really good player. Solid on both sides of the ball there. Obviously, Gunnar Henderson is the superstar. If it was a normal year last year, Gunnar Henderson would have definitely been high up in the MVP voting. Well, I guess he was high up in it anyways, but he would have been a true contender if it wasn't for Aaron Judge and Bobby Witt going crazy. But he put up 8 WAR last year. He's well on his way to being, I think, top 3 shortstop in baseball.
He's probably already there.
He's probably already there. Yeah, I mean he's definitely top 3. He might even be top 2 with Bobby Witt at this point. But you got Jackson Holliday at second. That's going to be an interesting one to watch.
Yeah.
He really struggled when he came up to the big leagues last year. I don't think he necessarily killed it in AAA last year. Okay, he did kill it in AAA last year.
Oh yeah.
After he went back down, but definitely it was a major struggle for him in the big leagues. Now he was only 20 years old. He probably came up too early, but he's a very very interesting player, very talented, and there's definitely a world where he breaks out this year. First base, Ryan Mountcastle, he's fine. He hits for some power. Doesn't do a ton else. Not the best defender at first base, but he's a good power bat. Ryan O'Hearn has been an interesting reclamation project that has worked out for this team over the last couple of years, and he's back once again at as the DH. I'm sure he will probably be a little bit of a platoon option as well. And then you've got Adley behind the plate, the franchise player here, the guy that kind of kick-started this whole rebuild, the number 1 overall pick in 2019. So this offense is incredible. I don't think you can say too much about Gunnar Henderson that hadn't already been said. He's great. I think there's really 2 things for me with this offense that are kind of interesting. Adley Rutschman last year was not the same guy that we had kind of come to expect. He had a 104 WRC plus. He was not elite defensively. He was fine, and he did DH some too, but he was not elite defensively. But we kind of expected him to take more of a step forward. His 2022 put up 5 wins above replacement. 2023 put up 5.6. Last year 2.8 in the similar amount of games. So he definitely took a step back. Do we think he's going to rebound back to his 2023, 2022 form and maybe even go further than that, break out further? Or is he kind of somewhere in between last year and what he had done the years before? And then also out of those, Colton Cowser, Westberg, and you can throw Kjerstad into that. Which one of those guys do you think is going to be the guy that breaks out?
For Adley, I really think he gets back to it. I think that's pretty simple. He's a guy that obviously something was up last year. I trust that he's a really good player, but catching is hard. And catching as many games as he does, he's going to wear down, I think, a little bit during the season. Last year, I think it got to him a little more, but Gary Sanchez being able to take over some of those games is probably going to help him out a lot. Then you've also got a very flexible roster where I think they did such an excellent job of providing potential platoon value. Like Laureano and Sanchez can play, Sanchez obviously catch a DH. Laureano can play any of the three outfield spots as a righty, take over for one of those lefties in a tough matchup. This sets up this lineup really well for success. You throw on there, like I really do believe in Colton Cowser. I think he is one of those guys that got underrated last year. I think he missed out on Rookie of the Year where he probably earned it over Gill, but Gill was playing for the more popular team, so he got the nod. Like Cowser had a better season. 24 home runs last season, right? 120 WRC plus for WAR. And then he's out here in spring training, 21% strikeout rate so far in 46 plate appearances with a 211 WRC plus. That's spring training, obviously, but that he's got a very good ceiling. There's more in there for Colton Cowser for sure. Lefty bat, really, really solid. I just feel super strongly that Cowser can take that next step. I'm very interested in this projection for Jordan Westberg. I think that's a little high, but Westberg has proven to be a really good player. So, yes, it's one of those things where, he's maybe not your prototypical third baseman, big guy, good slick fielder with a big power bat, but Westberg's going to go out there and, grind every day. He's going to be a really good player. So, this team is super good. But I like the flexibility of this roster construction where you'll see Laureano in there against the tough lefties. You'll see Sanchez in there against some lefties. Ryan O'Hearn and Kjerstad and Cowser are going to be playing against righties. Like, this team can really find its success, I think, very well, regardless of anything like that. The other team throws at them, and this offense is going to be very successful in the AL East this year.
Yeah, I'm with you. Looking at the bench, they're deep. Sanchez, good backup catcher. Urias has been a solid big leaguer for a while. Kjerstad, we mentioned him being a platoon option. Laureano was good last year. So bench is deep. And the other thing too is, and this is something that's interesting for this team. The farm system has been, every year has been the best farm system in baseball for a while, and then it's finally starting to lose all that depth, and mainly due to graduations because they're bringing guys up to the big leagues and they're being successful. So they got a really young big league team here, but they still do have a couple of high end prospects, and Coby Mayo and Samuel Basallo are both guys who are considered high end prospects. So I don't know if Samuel Basallo is going to be ready early this year. He's got some things to work out in his game. And Coby Mayo's had a really rough spring training, and he did not have a great cup of coffee at the big league level last year. But he obviously had a fantastic AAA season. So there's some level of volatility with those guys. Enrique Bradfield's really interesting to me too. At speed, one of the fastest players you'll see. I really like him, but the farm system has weakened out a little bit. But you mentioned we look at Ryan O'Hearn and Mountcastle. Those kind of a little bit of a lower projection for those guys. Could Coby Mayo or Samuel Basallo take over one of those spots at some point if those guys struggle? I think there's a possibility, there's a world where that happens, and they have yet another young star on this team.
Yeah, I think so too. Mayo's good, but he's been kind of vocal about being disappointed with, being sent to AAA again. And hey, it's a business. It's a tough spot to be in.
Yeah.
I think Basallo's maybe a little bit away. They're still going to try to get him to catch. He's 20 years old, got a AAA, struggled at AAA, but he got there at 20 years old, which I think is very impressive. You got to keep an eye on guys who do that. So Basallo's, he's like a top 15 prospect at this point. A lot of people really like him, but the question is, can he catch? And he's going to take some time to figure that out.
Yeah, that's definitely true. So I guess moving on, we go from the good to the bad. And this is where this team could have some hiccups, and that is the starting pitching. I think the bullpen should be pretty good, but the starting pitching here is not great. You got Zach Eflin, coming back this year. He's fine. I mean, he's not the best pitcher in baseball or anything, but he would be I think on a true like elite pitching staff, he would be like a good number 3.
Mm-hmm.
But of course here he's their number 1. But after that, and you can look down there and you can see the reason for it. A large reason for it is the injuries. But after Eflin, you really don't have much at all in this rotation. You've got Charlie Morton, who is about to be 42 years old, and has really struggled with walks and taking a step back over these last couple of years with his stuff as well. His velocity was down a full mile per hour last year. Um, the strikeout rate had a huge dip last year for him. The walk rate's pretty high, so there's signs of his aging. Although he still put up a 4.19 ERA last year, which is pretty good for but for your number two in your rotation, it's not.
No.
But for if you have him as a 5 starter, sure. But as for your number two, probably not. You get Dean Kramer here. I mean, he's kind of another one of those guys. He's like a number 4, number 5 starter on in a good rotation. Sugano, it's impossible to say what he's going to be, but I think the upside's a little bit limited with him. Cade Povich, I'm not a huge Cade Povich believer either. I mean, he was pretty bad last year in his 79 big league innings. Wasn't getting much swing and miss, walking a lot of guys. That's been a problem for him. Has been walks, and if he's not striking guys out, then he's just not going to be very good. And then Kyle Gibson, they signed yesterday, and he's another one of these guys that a little bit like Morton Kramer. Like if he's your number 5, sure. If he's your second best pitcher, I don't know about that. So that's tough. And some of our criticism of this team is you've known some of these were going to be the case. Like Kyle Bradish, you knew he was going to be out this year. So go get a guy to replace him for a year. And then when he comes back, you've got Kyle Bradish again. Like he's really good. And of course, Grayson Rodriguez, that he has dealt with a lot of injuries in his career. And it does sound like he will be back. He's throwing. So it does sound like it's not going to be a year ending. He hasn't had Tommy John surgery or anything to this point. But he's just now throwing off, playing catch, and it's March 22nd. So
right,
you're not going to be able to count on him for a couple of months, I wouldn't think. And then, the other guy, Tyler Wells, Trevor Rogers, also banged up. Another guy to know that's banged up, Chase McDermott. We got him listed here as a prospect to know. He could have been a really good piece for this rotation, but he has he's got a strained lat, and he still could end up being a good piece for this rotation, but he's going to miss the beginning of the year as well. So, David, this team's got and the bullpen here is pretty good. We'll talk about that a little bit more here in a minute, but this rotation, this definitely is going to hold this team back, right?
Yeah, it's going to hold this back. The comp that came to my mind while we were talking about this was another team that had a pretty good rotation going into last year. It fell off. The offense was incredible. We obviously spent too much time raving on it. And, they're led by a Zach, and it's the Diamondbacks from last season, right? They won 89 games, missed the playoffs, had the best offense in baseball, and the pitching failed them. This feels like what could happen with this team is last year's Diamondbacks, where the offense is great, the pitching fails them. And this team just is not, this pitching staff is not good. It's not a good pitching staff. It's going to struggle. I like Kyle Gibson. I think Kyle Gibson might actually be like the second best pitcher of this group that's not injured. So that's alarming. Like I think Kyle Gibson's sweeper is probably the best pitch that's not thrown by Zach Eflin in this whole group. And the problem is Kyle Gibson throws a fastball like 30% of the time that gets lit up. And if I keep saying, if Kyle Gibson go to a team that said, hey, don't throw the fastball, throw the sinker and the cutter as your hard pitch, and then throw the sweeper like 45% of the time, you'd get a really good pitcher out of him. Nobody's willing to do that yet, or he's stubborn. I don't know what the deal is there, but I think Kyle Gibson's a great signing for this team. They need the depth, and they need a guy who can go out and pitch every fifth day. Kyle Gibson definitely can do that. If he stopped throwing the fastball, he might be even better than that, but he hasn't done that yet. I like Zach Eflin. Think he's a really good pitcher. I like Grayson if he can get healthy. I think Grayson's an excellent one to Eflin's too. That's a playoff level 1-2, but you have not backfilled it with other players. And we looked at the Red Sox today. That's a team that improved the rotation top to bottom. They got better. This team is not. They have actively kind of kept the team middling in the rotation, and that's very concerning.
Yeah, and you mentioned there's really just not much behind this either. So if those guys that are injured don't really figure it out, and I mean, they really don't have anything. I mean, they got Roansy Contreras, I guess. He's got some good stuff. He's shown some flashes, but that's about it. Brandon Young's not a terrible prospect either. But we'll see what happens. I think I think this team definitely needs some help there. Maybe they'll add it at the deadline, but we'll see. Bullpen is really good. Felix Bautista, we'll see.
Yeah.
He's coming off of injury, and that's scary a little bit. And if you took out Felix Bautista's, projection here, you don't feel quite as good about this bullpen. But
Mhm.
Keegan Aiken's a good reliever since he transitioned there. Yenier Cano's been really good for this team. I'm not a big Sir Anthony Dominguez guy, but
Yeah.
he's shown some flashes at times. Gregory Soto's a very solid depth reliever. Like if he's your second lefty, that's good.
Mhm.
Cionel Perez has been here for a few years. He hadn't been terrible. So, I mean, I think that this bullpen should be good. If Felix Bautista is himself, because when he's
Yeah.
himself, he's incredible. But we'll see if they're able to make that happen this year. But I guess we can move on and talk real quick about the outlook. The 2025 Orioles have an over/under win total of 87.5. So, David, you take an over or under?
I'm gonna take the over, but I'm gonna take the over because I think this is gonna be an 89 win team. And I don't know if that's gonna be enough to make the playoffs. I have them projected in the playoffs in our projections. Because I think one of the other teams in this AL East is going to be underneath them. But this rotation is a legitimate problem, and that would not shock me if they wind up being under. The bullpen was fine, right? It's good. It's good enough, but the rotation is a big issue. And the offense, while the best in this division, um, it's not going to be everything. And that's going to concern me when it comes to the over under win total. I will still take the over. I think this team is good enough to kind of get around it, get close to 90. They might even break the 90 barrier, but it's going to be a struggle. And there's going to be times where this team really gets into a rut. If the offense slumps at all, the pitching's just not going to be able to pick them up, I don't think. And they're going to need the offense to drive this team. And that's sometimes risky. And I think they're flexible enough to get it done. But it concerns me when it comes to the over under total there. I'm right around this number for sure.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think I'm gonna take the under, but barely. Maybe 87 is the number. Like
Yeah.
I'm just like this pitching staff just scares me. I mean, if you're gonna have to score 5-6 runs a game, that puts a lot of pressure on your offense when you have to do that. And I just don't know. I mean, I like their offense. I think they've got some superstars. I just don't know if they're going to be able to just be the best offense in baseball like that, and a historically good offense. I just don't know. I mean, I still have
Yeah.
them as a really good team. I got them winning 87, 88 games somewhere in there. I actually do have them missing the playoffs in our predictions
Okay.
for the season. But we'll see. There's a world where the pitching gets healthy and they figure it out, and the offense and there's a world where it just doesn't matter because the offense is so good. But I think
Yeah.
they do have to have a lot of things go right offensively for this team to really be successful this year and make the playoffs, which should be the goal for them. Their odds to make the playoffs are minus 175. Favorite there. Odds to win the AL East plus 270. Odds to win the
Mhm.
World Series plus 1600. So definitely an interesting team to watch, a contender to watch here. But David, you got any final thoughts?
Final thought is, I made the Arizona Diamondbacks 2024 comparison. They scored 5.5 runs per game last year and missed the playoffs. I think that is a very legitimate possible outcome for this team. It's alarming. And, if I'm an Orioles fan, I'm hoping that they go out and address this rotation a little better than Kyle Gibson, or at least they tell Kyle Gibson not to throw that fastball. But I'm alarmed. I'm a little concerned, but the offense is so good that I'm still definitely excited. This is definitely a playoff caliber team. They just need more pitching.
Absolutely. Well, thanks everyone for tuning in. Don't forget, like, comment, subscribe, and we'll see you next time.